Greetings and welcome to Village in Motion. I'm your host, Marcia Boyles, and I'm just delighted today, as always, to introduce the Garden Ridge Administrator, Karen Boyce. Welcome, Karen.
Good morning. Thank you for having me again.
Well, we're just delighted, and I think you and I had a long talk the last time we interviewed, which was a month or two ago, and you had all kinds of things that you had started, new processes and procedures that I'm eager to find out about. So, do you want to begin with an update on the things that you'd like to talk about? And I think that would include some of the things we talked about last time.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me on. So, as always, we keep our focus and our attention on resident satisfaction. Some might say / customer service. It is always an ongoing process as how do we continue to improve upon what we have done or what we're currently doing. So it's never ending. And so to those lights, I always like to come on, and as you have said, you and I have discussed before, and just talk about some of the updates and how things are going since our last conversation.
Yes, and you had initiated some some new actions that I thought were very innovative. Tell us a little bit about those.
So if you remember correctly, we had the resident satisfaction survey, of course.
Yes.
And we developed an action plan. And some of the items that were on the action plan were the primary, or the big ones, I should say, the ones that stood out, were feedback regarding the noise.
Particularly at night.
Particularly in the evenings and at night when folks are trying to go to bed, to quiet the environment down. And to that avail, we did put up some signs, the quiet signs. We discussed it last month. We have been going around randomly asking current residents of Gardner Ridge or former residents, have they noticed a difference? And so far, they have indicated yes, that they felt the environment, the evenings are quieter, it's not as noisy as it used to be.
That's good news, Karen.
So we're doing our informal, I call it follow-up or feedback sessions to kind of just talk to residents, and especially residents who are on the long-term neighborhood, because this is permanent home, this is their home, this is where I live. So for those residents in particular, have gotten quieter, and they have indicated so far that yes, they felt the evenings and the nights are a bit quieter. On the short-term rehab neighborhood, of course, you know, these are the residents that are going to be there for short term, and then they're coming back to the IL apartment. They have also so far indicated that it has been quieter in the evenings at night. As I said before, it is something that we always have to work towards, because you can't stop. You know, reminding the staff members and reminding the team members that we are working in someone's home, we're working in an environment that is home-like, that when you're speaking to your fellow colleague or your team member, not to yell down the hallway is not something that can ever stop. It's something that you have to constantly remind folks to do, because human nature, when we're speaking, depending on how we are in our makeup, you know, I might say, hi, Michelle or John, and my voice carries. So that was one of the initiatives that we're working on, and
Yes,
so far
clearly
it
the
appears to be
staff
going
just
well.
don't think and just do it.
Correct. So that's why
yeah,
it's an ongoing
yes.
reminder session.
Well, that's good news, Karen, because I know that's been a continuing issue.
Continued. And as I said, it was a particularly big item when we had the survey, and then when we had the health services forum. The other thing that was also of concern, and we heard the residents loud and clear on, were that they felt the call lights. So if I'm a resident in Gardner Ridge and I need assistance and I'm in the room and I'm not able to get to the bathroom, or I need assistance with whatever, I press the call light, and someone should come in and assist me. The residents have told us in the past that sometimes they felt like the wait time has been too long, or that a team member perhaps comes in, cancels the light, says, I'll be back in a few minutes, but then they do not come back. So that was another concern on the survey. And again, we have put some systems in place. Of course, you and I discussed last month, we have a report that we can run that shows us the average length of time for each individual resident room. So let's say you're a resident and you're in room 1 in Gardner Ridge, and you put on your call light. I can go into a computer system which the team members, the staff, does not have access to. That is important. people may think, well, anybody can go in and change the numbers. They cannot. It's limited number of folks, including myself, that have access to that system. And we can run and we can see if a light was turned off and responded to, and what's the average response time. And
yeah, I think, Karen, that was news to all of us, that you actually had the capability of tracking those the call response time.
We have the capability of tracking it, but I also want to point out that it's not just tracking it alone, it's tracking it, but more importantly, are the team members responding when they go in? Because, someone can say, yes,
of
they
course.
go in and they turn off the light, but then
Right.
they don't take care of my needs.
Right.
So what is the point of someone coming in from a customer service point of view and turning off a light?
And there's no way to indicate that on the response
And there's
time.
there's a way to indicate it in terms of when we ask our resident, are they now attending to your needs? Are the responses positive or are they negative? And so far, again, as we've been monitoring it, it's been positive, but we continue to monitor those as well, because we have gone back again and again and again and reinforce with the team members. It is not just going in to say to the resident, I'll be back in a few minutes. If you do not go back, or importantly, why not take care of the need right then and there, as opposed to say, I'm coming back? Then that is a much better experience for the resident. So in the month of May, we had the average response time. Last month, it was average of 6 minutes. This month, in the month of April, it was an average response of 6 minutes. In the month of May, it was also an average of 6 minutes. However, I do have the breakdowns per neighborhoods or per floor. So on Evergreen, second floor, which is our short-term rehab floor, we have had 3,257 calls in the month of May alone. That's 3,257 times that a call light have gone off on that particular neighborhood alone. And the average response time for those call lights was 6 minutes. On Rose Court, third floor, now this is the long-term care, Rose Court, third floor, the number of calls in the month of May was 1,253 calls. So clearly, a little bit less than the rehab neighborhood, but the average response time was 5 minutes. So you're figuring 1,200 calls were made, and the average time it took a staff to respond was 5 minutes, which is great.
Good.
On Rose Court, fourth floor, this is the other long-term care floor that we have in Garner Ridge. This is the permanent home of the residents. We had an average number of calls of 1,803 calls. And the average response time was 7 minutes. So that neighborhood went up 1 minute above our average. We strive for a response at about 5 to 6 minutes on average. So they were a little bit high. And I wanted to share those particular details because when I say overall on all the neighborhoods it's 6 minutes, sometimes someone can say, well, you always say 6 minutes, Karen. But there is a specific breakdown per neighborhood, and they're not always hitting the 6. So when you combine all of those three together, the average was 6 minutes per call.
Well, I think 6 minutes sounds extremely respectable. Are you pleased with that number?
We are pleased because you have to set a benchmark someplace.
Of course.
You know, ideally, I would like it to be 0 minutes.
Of course.
But that's an almost impossible task.
Within 60 seconds.
Within 60 seconds, I press the light and someone have to zoom
Right.
into your room to take care of your needs. But I would like to continue to emphasize that having the numbers and the average response time is just one part of the equation. To us, the more important focus is when someone call light goes off, what does the team member do when they go into the room?
Yes, of course.
Are they meeting the resident needs? Does the resident need to go assistance to the bathroom? Do I escort you or support you going to the bathroom? Do you just need a cup of water? Do you need perhaps the remote control to be closer to you?
Need to know what time it is.
Do you need to know what time it is or something?
Something
So
simple.
are we then meeting your needs? And even more importantly than that, before I leave your room, am I then saying, is there anything else I can do for you? Because that also then kind of give a pause, and it gives you, the resident, an opportunity to think, before Karen leave, do I need anything else?
Right.
Am I okay? Because, you know, sometimes you can walk out, and as I'm walking down the hall, there goes the call light
Right.
again. So it gives that momentary pause to say, before I leave as a caregiver, let me check in with you and see, is there anything else I can get for you? Is there anything else I can assist you with before I leave? And
So that's more efficient both for the caregiver and for the resident.
Absolutely it is, because the driving force behind it is the numbers, again, are good, but we are there to meet the resident needs. And I say this every single month I come on, and I'm probably going to sound like a broken record. We can never stop and rest on what we do. When you're in the business of caring for people, and in this case, our geriatric elderly population, it could have been in a hospital setting or some other setting. In our setting, when you're in, that is your life's work and that is your passion. And when our team members have signed on to say, this is what I would like to do as my career choice and as my job, then there is no, oh, we are the best, and then you stop, because it's people. Right. The needs change, the expectation change.
It's dynamic.
It's dynamic. Employees come to work every day, and they have their own stresses.
Yes, of
and
course.
things going on in their personal life. So it's an ongoing education, ongoing training, ongoing reminders, and hopefully, and at the end of it all, when we do, whether it's another resident satisfaction survey coming up in a few months, or when we talk to the residents individually, or we talk to their family members, they can say, yes, things are good, things have improved, things are great. You know, we'll always have a couple of little areas that we need to work on.
Karen, let me ask you about satisfaction survey. Is there a separate one for the permanent residents of Garden Ridge, different than the independent living survey?
It's the same survey, but it's in a different format. So the questions that are now, there's some questions that are asked in terms of, you know, are we meeting your need? Are you satisfied with the care? You know, all of those. And so overall, the questions are the majority pretty much the same. But
they
independent
pertain
living,
only to Garden Ridge.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And in independent living, you get the written survey.
Yes.
And in Garden Ridge, it could either be a phone survey. And last year, for the first time, they did the email, the survey, where you can fill it out electronically.
Now, how many folks over at Garden Ridge are using a computer?
These are the family members.
Oh, it's the family members.
Family members,
oh,
yes.
So the individuals in assisted living, for example, do not fill out their own survey?
Some of them do. We assess the resident ability to complete the survey.
I see. All right.
And if they can, they certainly do it on their own, because we believe in residents' rights. So if you're able to do the survey on your own, absolutely you can do the survey. But if you cannot, or if you have elected to have your family member complete the survey on your behalf,
I see. All
then
right.
that is allowed as well.
Do you find there's a great difference between the responses of individual residents versus families?
Well, we hope it should not be that much difference, because
I would hope not either, but I wondered if, in fact.
I don't necessarily know if it's a great difference, because we're very much connecting with the families in Garden Ridge as well. We do have a very strong connection to reaching out and communicating with the families of the loved ones in Garden Ridge and keeping them in the loop, letting them know what's going on in the building. We have regular meetings, we have events where we invite them in. So it's a good relationship as well with the families in Garden Ridge.
All right, I toured the fourth floor, the memory floor, fairly recently, and I was struck by that very fact, that the families really, really have a lot of interaction with the staff. And I thought it was such a positive kind of thing.
On memory care in particular, it's 44-bed neighborhood, and so the residents that live on that particular neighborhood, strong family involvement. Strong connection to the team members, regular visits.
The team members clearly knew the family well, and the reverse. Family members felt very comfortable with the staff.
Absolutely,
absolutely. And it showed.
Yes. So those were some of the updates from the survey. And then I also wanted to remind folks, or to remind everyone, that on next week, Thursday, the 25th of June, that is next Thursday. June the 25th, there is a Garden Ridge and the medical center. We're having our town hall meeting. Our first ever Garden Ridge
Medical Center
combined town hall meeting. And it's going to be in the Hunters Crossing Conference Center. I believe it is from, and I have the information right here. Of course, I have to remember the time. It is from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And we're looking forward to having a large audience participation. And this is also part of the resident satisfaction survey, because if you remember correctly, health services come under one umbrella. So Garden Ridge and the medical centers are usually combined on the health services. And we decided with Dr. Bettel, our medical director, and Jeanette, our practice administrator, to combine and do a town hall meeting. And the focus of this, or the purpose, is to help educate our residents about the services and about how the collaboration and cooperation works between the medical center and Garden Ridge. So that is to take a look at how the two work together. And we do have some tip items on the agenda that will be reviewed. We're going to look at Garden Ridge, the provider, the coverage in Garden Ridge. How does the doctors who work in the medical center provide coverage in Garden Ridge? There is nurse practitioner, which I think sometimes is still kind of gray area for some residents to understand, because they hear the word nurse and they think, well, no, that person is a nurse, they're not a doctor.
Right.
But a nurse practitioner is a highly skilled, highly trained individual that works in partnership with the doctor. And so we're going to do some education around the role of the nurse practitioner.
As a primary health care provider.
Mental health. We're going to remind folks there's a mental health practitioner as well on the community. And I'm not sure if a lot of residents are aware.
I think that's right.
Of those services that are available as well.
Not terribly aware.
We're going to be talking about we talked about the noise and the light, discharges, customer service training, comment cards, and some of the other things that we've put in place already. And I know folks want to hear about CarePath. On the medical center side, the CarePath initiative has been a big initiative.
Now, what is that, Karen?
So CarePath is where someone then, if they're not using the primary care physician on the community, it would be good for them to still have medical information in the medical center. And that way, if an emergency happens, you may not be using the medical center providers, but if an emergency happens and you need to be sent out, at least the medical center have basic information on you on file in the medical center.
Well, and that could be accessed then by security and the social workers.
Absolutely.
And anybody like that who
so we'll
needed
be
it.
discussing a little bit more about that, educating. And of course, the health portal has always been a topic of interest to our independent living audience. So we're going to be talking a little bit about those things also. So those are some of the agenda items that is going to be talked about or discussed at the upcoming Garden Ridge Medical Center or Medical Center Garden Ridge Town Hall meeting, which is next Thursday, June the 25th, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
I think particularly with the number of newcomers that we are seeing coming in the last year or two, that this would be particularly acutely needed.
It is. When I walk the community, or whether you do a survey or you just go to different meetings and you talk to residents and you have the dialogue or the discussions, sometimes the information they have or their perception of Garden Ridge is not always perhaps the most correct or up-to-date information. So something like a town hall meeting will hopefully help to educate or inform or share information to residents in independent living about how Garden Ridge operates, what are some of the things that happen on a regular basis there, and just some of the collaboration and partnership of things that we do on an ongoing basis. Another example of that, and you and I were speaking before we went on camera about our quality measures.
Yes, that's a very interesting concept. Karen, tell us about the oversight that you have of this.
So, we call it our clinical benchmark, or you can say quality measures, whatever the terminology is, but we are required to monitor and assess how we deliver care each and every day.
All right, now we're talking about all of Garden Ridge.
All of Garden Ridge. And the clinical measures is pertaining specific to clinical care.
All right.
So this is the care that the nursing team delivers to residents day in and day out.
All right, it has nothing to do with the quality of the food or the living arrangements. It's the actual care.
Clinical care, hands-on care of how we deliver care. And so we measure certain categories. We measure, for instance, transfers. If someone come to Garden Ridge, let's say they were in independent living, went to the hospital, and then they were discharged from the hospital, and they needed to come to Garden Ridge.
Yes. We
measure how do they then have to go back to the hospital.
Oh, all right.
Because, and if they did, and sometimes they do, but if someone had to go back to the hospital after coming to Garden Ridge, then I ask the question, why?
Right.
Is it a missed opportunity? Were they discharged from the hospital
too early?
Too early?
Yes.
Were they medically complex? Did something medically new took place with that person?
That could be a reflection on the hospital as much as as Garden Ridge.
As much as us.
Yes.
And so we measure some of those things. We also measure things like falls in Garden Ridge. If as you and I know, at my age, I know if I fall, it's not pretty. So for a resident in the 80s and 90s, that can be very devastating.
Yes.
So we measure those things. We have benchmark numbers that we do. So I'll give an example, for instance, on falls. The nationwide, in facilities similar to ours, the national is 8% per 1,000 resident days. Erickson, as a corporation, says we're going to bring it below the national of 8% to 7.5%. So they have moved it below. Now, ours, so far for the month of May, was 2%.
Ah.
That is something to celebrate.
I guess.
And to put it in a larger context, that means our residents, the team in Garden Ridge, which is something to be proud about, is doing a fantastic job in knowing the needs of the resident, anticipating the needs of the resident, and helping to get to them and deliver care, so there should be no reason to have someone fall. So had a 2% in the month of May is extremely a great achievement for the nursing team. Something else we measure is things like medication errors.
And how do you determine those?
So there's an entire, which you and I probably will not have enough time to talk about today, but there's an entire tracking mechanism for when a nurse gives medication and the recording system and all of these things that have to go in place. So, and it's more than one individual that audit these things and monitor these things. Our corporate partners, they review all of these things. So there's a whole mechanism that is behind it. Because someone may say, yeah, Karen, how will I know if a nurse gives me the wrong pill?
Right. How will you know if the pharmacy actually gave you the wrong?
And that's just, there's an entire mechanism of quality measures and checks and balance that must take place. If you have 30 medication for the month and you get a pill a day, at the end of the month when we're doing the audit, we should have 0 pills remaining.
All right.
So if I still have 5 pills left, then what happened? Or if I come up short of pills, you're out of pills and today's only the 25th day of the month.
All
what
right.
happened. So that's why I say it's a more complex process that we have audit systems in place to monitor it. But those are some of the things that we monitor. We monitor the use of antipsychotic medication. Is it being used for the right reasons? For someone who may need that particular medication, is it being used for the right reasons? So the clinical benchmarks are things that we measure that indicate to us how care is being delivered to the resident.
And those are done monthly.
The report is done monthly. We have a QA, QI nurse that is her specific job is to collect all the data, review the data, assess the data, and she reports it to corporate. And then corporate takes the data and they aggregate it and they take a look at all the information again to make sure the data that is being reported makes sense. On our MDS side, it's a documentation process that we do. This is more data that's then reported out to the state. So the state...
And now, is that also on a monthly basis?
That's also on a monthly basis. The state of Virginia also collects data on how we deliver care, and it's reported to them as well.
Now, what agency in the state oversees an institution like Garden Ridge?
So for skilled nursing is the Department of Health. For assisted living is the Department of Social Services.
Oh, so you're reporting to two different...
For assisted living is agencies.
Now, does Medicare also have requirements?
That's the Department of Health for Medicare.
I see.
That's the Department of Health, yes.
Okay. Well, that's a complicated process, isn't it?
It very much is.
Do you feel like you do an awful lot of paperwork?
We do an awful lot of paperwork, but at the end of the day, regardless of the paperwork, we're able then to have numbers that we're able to look at, assess, and it gives us something to measure ourselves by.
Absolutely, benchmarks. That makes perfect sense, Karen, but it also is clearly very complex, and I think we just don't. The average resident, including myself, just doesn't think about the fact that you do a lot of reporting in a lot of ways to a lot of people.
Right. And that's why I like to share it sometimes to kind of let folks get an understanding of
I think we need to be aware of that. It helps us know that you're, of course, being kept right on your toes.
Yes, I am. Yes, we are, I should say. Yes, we are.
Karen, I see that our time is coming to a close here. It always goes so fast with you. You have such interesting information to provide. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Maybe just a reminder about Thursday, a week from Thursday, the 25th, from 2 to 4. The first town forum, town hall that combines Medical Center and Garden Ridge.
Yes.
In the Hunters Crossing Conference Room.
Absolutely, and so we're looking forward to have as many of our residents come in and just, if nothing else, to just sit and listen to the dialogue. If they have questions, fantastic. But it would be good information to have, to know. As all my independent living resident tells me, Karen, we hope to never, ever see you in Garden Ridge. But I always say, which is great, I hope never to see you either. However,
if it should happen.
Right. And life sometimes throws us those curveballs that we absolutely have no control over. And so when those circumstances happen, at least you will have information about Garden Ridge and about the community overall. So it's not so scary and unknown.
When we really need it, we're terribly fortunate to have it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Karen, I think with that, we will stop. Thank you so much for coming in today. This has been so informative. I think we'll turn to some announcements, and then I'm going to ask you to read the brain tease for the day.
Okay.